Sorry.
It's fine.
It was a good
David's been
pass.
angry the whole show today, David.
I'm not even angry, actually. It's just stuff that's like, it's kind of,
It's just venting. Venting
is.
about all the things.
All right, so I'm going to press the share button on the social. That's gone. And I hit the sticky button. Yes. Okay, we are good to go. And I will start recording. And I will do the intro. This week's Android Police podcast is brought to you by Linode. Check them out at linode.com/Android Police to get a free $20 Linode service credit.
Welcome to the Android Police Podcast, your weekly audio source for all things Android. It is Thursday, August 11th, 2016. I'm your host, Matthew Smith.
I'm David Reddick.
I'm Ryan Whitwam.
And I'm Cody Toombs.
All right, so today we're going to start the show off with one word that will get everybody excited, followed by another word that will make everyone's blood boil. So those words are Nexus and Verizon. So,
yeah.
All right. So Evan Blast this week tweeting out that Verizon will get the 2016 Nexus phones, the Sailfish and the Marlin, at least some combination of those two phones. There's actually only one combination of two phones. That's just a dumb thing to say. People, of course, getting reminders of the Galaxy Nexus, which released on Verizon and then promptly got no updates. People obviously remembering the phones in the past which were Verizon compatible, but Verizon wouldn't activate them. So I don't know that Nexus and Verizon are two words that go very well together in the minds of probably most of our listeners.
Yeah, it's questionable. I think, if I were to guess, and we don't have anything to indicate this on a business decision level, that kind of stuff is very hard to get a hold of. But I would guess that the reason they're doing this is essentially to ensure that they get true four-carrier compatibility and that there aren't any compromises there in terms of difficulty of getting the devices activated in Verizon's system.
I mean, that's kind of the way I took it, but I mean there are like 4 or 5 different interpretations of that 30-word tweet on different websites. People are reading into it like a whole lot. But yeah, I mean, I think the most likely thing is Google's just trying to get all of its ducks in a row. So if you buy one of these phones, you'll actually be able to get Verizon to activate it.
And not only that, hopefully you would also get Verizon's like advanced calling features. I think that's probably a big part of what they want, so that they can say across hopefully all 4 networks. I don't know about Sprint. I don't know if any unlocked phones support Sprint's advanced network capability.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that they've really pushed it as like a thing that unlocked phones need to do. Like Verizon and T-Mobile and AT&T have at least. Like T-Mobile won't even they'll hassle you if you even have Band 12 activated on an unlocked phone and you don't do their certification stuff.
And AT&T does, I think, allow VoLTE certification for unlocked devices, but Sprint doesn't seem to have anything like that going on. Yeah. But Sprint being number 4 now, who cares?
Sprint has a lot more issues to deal with than getting its VoLTE stuff figured out.
Yeah. So
Can we talk about VoLTE for a second? Because who cares?
I don't particularly care because I hate phone calls, but some people don't, and like it's a thing that's happening whether or not you want to use it, and it's going to affect like updates for phones and band support for phones. So it's something you have to care about sort of in the abstract.
And also Wi-Fi calling is another big one there too.
Wi-Fi calling, I think, is probably a bigger deal.
But that's in AOSP now, right? Like for at least like T-Mobile's version of it.
I don't know, but I know that AT&T and Verizon both have Wi-Fi calling now, and so I assume Google wants the phones to work with that stuff as well. So I think it's just about getting to the point where Google can sell a phone that they could say, hey, basically this does all of the advanced network stuff that Apple's phones do, and that makes carriers happy, and then maybe eventually that leads to Google getting better terms with the carriers. I think Verizon carrying it is a big deal, because your handset selection on Verizon is still comparatively limited. So I think that's, probably good for Google, depending on what kind of deal they get. And I would bet it's in no small part because Google is going to have the dedicated Google support for these new Nexus devices, so that Verizon won't be the front line for customer support issues, in theory. even though that's probably what most people will reflexively do because that's what they've always done. But that's actually apparently a big consideration. I've talked to a number of people in the industry, I guess, and carriers, their number one concern is what is it going to cost to support this phone? And if Google can say, hey, we're going to have live chat support on the device and we're paying for all of it, could be a big deal, and would encourage carrier to carry the device. Now, the downside is that somebody discovered a string in the dump for one of these phones that said basically the OEM unlock toggle in dev options has a message in a string that says carrier devices cannot be OEM unlocked. So that would annoy people.
But aren't all Verizon devices unlocked?
Network unlocked.
Well, that's different than bootloader unlocking.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, so it would be network unlocked, but not bootloader unlocked. Maybe
that would be very strange if they were actually distributing like different devices through carrier stores. I feel like it would not take long for somebody to find some way to flash something or other to these phones that would make them unlockable.
That's what people are saying, is that if the SKU is the same, a signed image is a signed image, and if you can get in there and flash it, maybe you can get around this. But I guess this would be probably a different. This is at the bootloader level, so maybe it wouldn't work that way.
Yeah, all they'd have to do is stick on a different bootloader, and it pretty much breaks any realistic pushing of anything signed that they don't want in there.
Then are those devices going to get different updates?
Yeah, they'd have to.
That seems like that's getting into Galaxy Nexus territory, which is what we don't want.
Yeah, but Nexus devices currently already do have multiple branches of updates for some unexplained reasons.
Well, there's still things you can download and flash, and they're not like restricted. Like you could flash, a different carrier's like special version of an update if you wanted to, because they're all the same hardware. Like if they were actually going to start issuing carrier-specific updates for different devices, then it feels like they're going to give Verizon a lot more control over the updates than they should have.
Yeah, I guess we don't know what's going to happen here. I would not be surprised if between Google providing more support and being willing to work with Verizon on things like the bootloader, maybe some kind of deal was put in place where Google gets more of the Apple treatment and Google only has to send in certain parts of the firmware for review to Verizon, and so they can speed up the process. Because as far as I know, Apple only has to submit basically the radio to carrier partners for verification as part of their update process, so it goes much more quickly. So maybe Google finally managed to get that kind of deal. But that's total speculation. We have no reason to believe that's happening. But it could be, it seems like with the blocked bootloader, I would be surprised if Google didn't feel like they got something in return for that concession.
Yeah, they have to know that they're going to catch a lot of flack if they do that, so hopefully they got something useful.
Granted, only from like a tiny percentage of people who would actually buy the phone through Verizon anyway, but, they like to make a lot of noise.
Well, there's always a chance that maybe the contract has a very strict, spelled-out rule about when updates, how long Verizon's allowed to delay updates, or whether they're allowed to at all.
Yeah. I'll be very curious to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Yep. I think as strictly as far as if you buy an unlocked one, activating it on Verizon's network should, in theory, be more possible, is about the only positive that I can take out of this, because I won't be buying one from Verizon. I'm a Verizon customer, and I would just assume pay full price and not finance it through them, just to avoid all this crap. And I think mostly everybody who listens to us probably feels the same way. So, yeah.
I'm curious if they're going to do other carriers. We know Verizon, but
I haven't seen anything to indicate that. Somebody said something about AT&T, but they're just pointing to AT&T network-specific functions to draw that conclusion. So we haven't seen anything about that yet. Not to say it won't happen.
All right, so next, a little bit of Android Wear news. So those of you out there who used the Together functionality in Android Wear. Word is that is going to be shut down on September 30th, which in and of itself, a watch face getting shut down, probably not the biggest news, except that could mean that we're getting Wear 2.0 presumably before September 30th. So I guess that's good news. Now, David, I seem to recall you mentioning on Twitter the other day that Android Wear 2.0 is the devil or the worst thing ever. Or
I mean, I don't like it. I haven't used my Wear device in over a month after I flashed Wear 2.0 to it. I just couldn't deal. But I don't know what everybody else's opinion is.
How much of that is bugginess, and how much of it is just like bad?
The new
decisions?
notification paradigm is like driving me nuts. I just.
So they're like the end notifications on a phone, but on a watch.
I don't know. I just don't like the way they're handled now. The scrolling sucks. It's way too touchy. Everything is way too touchy. That's kind of my problem. Where used to be kind of, it felt like a little slow by design. So accidental interactions were pretty hard to do. Whereas in Wear 2.0, it's very easy to accidentally dismiss a notification and not even understand like how it happened. Like what gesture did you make that this is gone now? So at least that's how I feel about it. Maybe, by the time it goes to release, I would not be surprised if they do some tweaking based on feedback.
Based on your tweets.
Yeah, obviously based on my completely insubstantive tweets that contain no good examples of what I'm actually complaining about.
Well, Hiroshi Lockheimer is like he's creeping on your Twitter feed now, sending you emojis.
I just latched on to an MKBHD reply.
Yeah, the one thing that gets me is a lot of people jumped on the September 30th date and insisted that had to mean Wear 2.0 was coming out, and there's so much evidence to refute that. They've got a timeline, sort of like the developer previews for the phones, and that's not supposed to be up until almost the end of the year, if not possibly past it.
Like they could turn off together at essentially any point, and it wouldn't make any difference because like nobody uses it. That's why they're shutting it off. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a big deal. Like this is the release, and we have to turn this off because it doesn't work on the new versions. Like they're just like, this sucks, and this is the day that we decided to kill it.
Yeah, and it's just a service. It's a really low-cost, simple service. They're running probably on one server in the middle of nowhere, and they're like, you know what? This is costing us $10 a month. That's way more than it's worth. Screw it.
Yep. Yeah, I don't understand why they kept this going. So, I don't see don't think many people were honestly using this feature. How many people even own Wear watches? I don't think that was...
I have a drawer full of watches, and like, I've mentioned to my wife occasionally, like, she could use one, she could wear it, and she doesn't because, like, most people don't want them. So like, even if I can't get somebody to wear a watch so that we can do the together thing, like how many couples are going to ever find a reason to do this? Not many.
Yeah, and honestly, it was an experiment. It was kind of a gimmicky experiment, which
it was like the Apple Watch does this thing where you can like share stuff in this kind of quirky way. So we should have it too, and send your heartbeat to people and what. But like obviously that's good in a commercial, and it's not so good like in real life. Nobody really wants to do that.
Sending your heartbeat to your significant other always cracked me up because it's like you could be at the strip club and your heartbeat's really going, and you send it, and like, hey, check out how worked up I am at the strip club. That sounds like a really bad idea. All right, so moving on to Google Now news. So apparently, Google is testing out a dashboard tab in Google Now. I'll admit I'm not really sure that I understand what the dashboard is. It seems to be a collection of data that used to just be in Now. That now it's in a separate tab now. I don't know. Who knows about this dashboard?
It's hard to really say what's happening here. I feel like what we're watching is the transformation of the Google app experience from what it is now into what it's going to be by the time the new Nexus phones launch. and Google is just starting to test little pieces a little bit at a time, but not giving us the full picture yet. So I feel like we're going to probably see a lot of these strange little tweaks in the next month or so, or even beyond that, that don't really make sense by themselves. So, like this tab thing, honestly, it looks like the idea is you will have in the Home tab, this is the stuff that Google thinks you want to know based on what you've done before. And in the dashboard, it's information that you've more specifically created, reminders, events, information from other Google apps that you've interacted with, maybe in specific ways. Maybe there's like I don't know, I'm not sure. I can't think of a good, like maybe it just puts like, maybe your steps in Google Fit go in this tab. Maybe Android Wear could put something in there like your watch's battery. I mean, there are a number of things you could put in here that dashboard would, seemingly provide a, kind of a good use for. We only have one screenshot of the dashboard right now, and it just shows calendar appointments. So dashboard would seem to be a much more personal, centric area for data that's very specific to you, whereas home is more general data that Google just thinks you may want to know, like the weather, or what's going on in the news, what's going on in sites you tend to follow usually, major events, things like that. But again, I don't think we have the full picture here yet, and probably won't necessarily for a while.
It's definitely, from what I can tell, it seems like Google's kind of headed towards this thing where they want a lot of search stuff to be an overlay on the operating system. And yeah, dashboard and the Google tab next to it, that's just going to be your information source. It seems like that's got to be the direction they're headed.
All right, so now we got a little bit of Google Now integration going into Google Now on tap. So apparently, the cards that you're used to seeing in Google Now will show up in a third place. So so we've got Google Now, we've got Google Now dashboard, and now we're going to have Google Now cards in your Google Now on tap results, which we might have an image or two here that'll show you what that looks like. I'll pull up on the screen here. So it just this kind of feels like another example I think we've talked about this week after week, where Google Now is just kind of struggling to find where it fits in.
Yeah, but I mean, this is,
I should say now on tap is struggling to find.
This is something we've sort of been wishing they would do for a long time, though, because there's so many times where you open Now on tap and it just says, "Sorry, I don't have anything. Check back later," which just makes you not want to do it again. I mean, at least with this, there's something like you'll be able to get to some of the more important Now cards. However, right now it appears that, well, one, this is in the beta app, so if you're not in the beta, you won't see this yet. It appears that it only comes up when you're on the home screen, specifically on the Google Now launcher. So if you're in another app and you open Now on tap and it doesn't have anything, it'll still just say that there's nothing there. And then if you're, if you're in something and you have results, then it'll show you the results. But so these aren't available like everywhere in the operating system, which is kind of what I wish they would do, so that like you could see the results for Now on tap, and if you just scroll up, there will be Now cards. So maybe there's more useful stuff.
So you would think that they would surface the cards for the third-party apps when you have those third-party apps open.
I mean, I guess you would think. I mean, not all apps have those, so.
No, there's not a ton that do, but Feedly is the one that shows up on mine all the time. Feedly has Now cards, which I have absolutely zero use for. But I would think that if I pulled up Now on tap with Feedly up, that that would be there. But
yeah, Now on tap is a great example of overpromising and under-delivering.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to see very significant changes to Now on tap, and possibly rebranding when the new Nexus phones come out, because it's just not taken off. And this also just seems kind of bizarre to put the cards in there when we know Google's also testing this new this tab layout essentially in the Google Now screen. Heavy information redundancy there.
I hope that this will all sort of come into focus when NuGet comes out.
I hope so, because I also have a feeling that Google themselves are still like, well, we're not sure exactly which way we want to go with this yet, but we're working on it, I guess.
I've got a hunch this is going to, probably not with Nougat, but with Google Assistant. That should answer some of it, hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Whether or not Assistant comes out with Nougat, we'll see.
All right, so let's move on to a little bit of rumor roundup. So we have a render leaked out this week of the upcoming LG V20, set to be announced and hopefully released in September. And I find it a little bit disconcerting because it looks very clearly like the bottom edge of this phone represents a removable chin, much like we saw on the LG G5.
Yeah, so we don't know that. We don't know that for sure, but it really, really, really looks like it. I've heard some people say that like it might be a camera button, but it looks a lot like the quick release button on the G5.
Yeah, especially given the contrasting color of the chin itself.
Yeah, so I mean, it would be so weird though for LG to sort of forge ahead with modular attachments for this phone after it was clearly such a flop with the G5. I feel like maybe they were designing this like 8 or 9 months ago with the modular stuff, and it was just too late for them to change the design. So maybe they won't make modules for it, but like that's just how you'll get the battery out is by popping the bottom of the phone off, and they'll just pretend that that's just a completely random thing they came up with. Like, here's how you take the battery out of the phone. That's the only reason.
Well, the modules thing, because this phone is going to be a different size.
Yes,
than
that's the other
G5,
thing. Is
presumably,
that, yeah, the modules for the G5 wouldn't fit on this phone, so they would have to have its own ecosystem modules, which clearly the phone would not support. Like there aren't enough people interested in the G5 modules. There definitely won't be enough people to make V20 modules make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
I would die a little inside if they like made an adapter for the G5 modules.
That would be.
I don't even know how you do
that would
it.
be kind of amazing. It'd be like a little trapezoid on the bottom of the phone that narrows to the width of the G5.
Terrifying.
I just want it to work without an adapter. I just want people plugging in undersized mods to the phone. That sounds.
There's like a little spacer you can stick in there to seal up the sides of the phone so that it's not so that dust doesn't get in there. There are a lot of really fantastically stupid things they could do that I think even LG is not stupid enough to do.
Yeah, we'll see.
I
feel like this will.
Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like this will do better than the G5, almost for sure.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they learned a lot about the fit and finish of that phone, because that's one of the things that I think really killed the G5 is like it just didn't feel like a $700 phone, and like that's the sort of thing that they could change sort of without a whole year of development time. They could make this phone feel nicer by not covering it in primer, and paying a little bit more attention to how the bottom chin fits on.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that critically was a major flaw. I think that overall, I think they have a good chance, although Samsung's pre-orders for the Note 7 are apparently through the roof. I feel like that among Android enthusiasts, LG has a real good shot with this phone because it'll ship with Android N, and I will not be surprised in the least that the specifications in several ways trounce the Note 7, apart from display where Samsung just kind of runs away with it.
This phone, it has to do well for LG to be in any kind of a good position to do future phones.
Yeah, definitely.
The G5 was such a mess.
So I would just like to point out, because one thing I didn't get to on the screen share I did earlier was the back images of the phone. But I would like to point out that it almost looks like there's a chin on the top as well as the bottom.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of wondering if they did that for symmetry.
Yeah, maybe they did it for symmetry, or maybe there was like, hey, just kidding, guys, we're not doing that stupid shit anymore.
I don't know.
We just do that because it looks good.
I'm sure this phone was designed before the G5 even came out. So
I'm sure. But I mean, really, it doesn't take that much after original design modification to just glue that bad boy on there and make it not come off.
That's true. That is true. It's a button now.
I'm pretty sure the Like it's gonna have a removable battery somehow. Like that's LG's thing now. I don't see
dumb thing.
I don't see any other way for it to get out of the phone than for the bottom to pop off.
Hey, our thing is that thing that went out of fashion on laptops like, I don't know, 6 years ago.
David, have you not been to Reddit lately? Everybody wants a removable battery.
Everyone does. Everybody cares so
highly
much.
in demand. Yeah.
So much.
All right, so next we got a little bit of a rumor regarding the upcoming Asus ZenWatch 3. Asus really sticking with this Android Wear thing, so give them props for that. Apparently, it's looking like we're going to see a round one this time around, which has been, I mean, pretty much the number one complaint against the ZenWatch 1 and 2 was that it wasn't round. I mean, I don't know.
Flaws, not round.
I'm pretty sure. Like, I bet that's probably in our pro-con column on the reviews. I should look. No, but the second one was just kind of like clunky. They made it a really like aggressively budget-oriented watch, and I feel like the fit and finish was like just kind of not there. So hopefully this time they're changing it all up. They're gonna make it round. We're assuming because the label for the FCC stuff is round, you would want to put that probably on a round watch. So if they're changing all of the design stuff, then hopefully this time they'll go a little bit more premium and make it feel more like a nice watch.
You know what I wonder? Android Wear, I see almost no Android Wear watches out in the world. If I see a smartwatch, it's an Apple Watch or sometimes a Pebble. Rarely.
I would just like to point out that I probably see 3 Android Wear watches to every one Apple Watch I see.
Really?
Yes,
see.
But here's the thing you have to keep in mind. The thing you have to keep in mind, I work for a software company. I don't exactly have a representative sampling.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen probably more Apple Watches than Android Wear watches, but not by like a huge amount.
Okay, well, I live in LA where aesthetic is everything, so I see infinitely more Apple Watches than I do Android Wear devices. I see no Android Wear device. If I see a Moto 360, which for the record is the only Android Wear device I ever see, and fewer because people are retiring them, that's like a thing. Like I'm like, whoa, somebody's actually wearing an Android Wear watch.
I've seen like a fair number of Huawei watches. I saw a couple of Watcher Banes. That was a thing.
Huh. I haven't seen any of those.
I live in a pretty small town that's honestly really backward, and especially based on the conversations we had earlier today. And I actually do see a few of them. It's not a ton. It's mostly Moto 360s. I've seen a couple of Urbanes. I think I'm the only person I've seen with a Huawei watch around here. But to be fair, I don't see a lot of Apple watches. And that's entirely because the area I live in is very not iPhone-centric. We have very few of them floating around.
I will say, okay, so Wade County mentioned in the chat, like, I see Fitbit devices probably 5 to 1 compared to Wear. I see a ton of those.
Oh, yeah, well, I see a lot of Fitbits.
Yeah,
Granted,
I'd agree
that's
with
not
that.
a smartwatch. Well, the Blaze kind of is. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it just kind of depends on what circles you're in.
I would guess major metro, you're much more likely to see an Apple Watch. Even when I go to San Francisco, it's all Apple Watches. I mean, they're probably Android Wear watches, but the level of noise of Apple Watch just on number of wrists it's hard to pick out the Android stuff. So I would guess that if you go to New York, if you go to other major. If you go to coastal metropolitan areas, you'll probably see way more Apple Watches than you would Android Wear. So I guess anyway, where I was going with this is, how are companies making money on Android Wear watches? I don't really quite understand. Like, are they profitable? Is Google underwriting the cost on these?
I think the markup's great.
That's true. The markup probably is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, they are selling these for like $300. They probably cost not very much.
For the price of a budget phone, you can get one of the cheaper Android Wear watches.
And
assuming brand new.
I mean, and Google does all of the software stuff. Like OEMs do very little.
And there's basically no support aspect on a smartwatch. Nobody's emailing you asking you how to do email on their smartwatch. If you're buying a smartwatch, you're already taking a kind of a walk off the deep end in terms of bleeding edge technology. So I guess that makes sense. There's probably pretty low overhead. All you have to really design is, you have to design the PCB, but the parts are pretty standard. You have to make the battery fit, and you have to pick a display. And at that point, you just design the case, which isn't trivial, but cost-wise is probably much lower than designing a phone.
Yeah.
So that is a point. I still wonder if they do make money on them, though.
Speaking of designing the case, I'm interested to see, just based on their previous efforts, if ZenWatch 3 is a round watch, what the bezels on it look like.
Yeah,
Good question.
Really quick, just to comment on the roundness. Judging by so much stuff that's come out, it looks like Android Wear 2.0 is really focused on making round the thing.
Definitely.
I'd be surprised if we saw too many square watches in give it about another year or two, and I would not be surprised if they just stopped coming out entirely.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens there. I mean, I'll be curious if there still are Android Wear watches in 2 years. But
honestly, at this point in time, who's still making square watches if Asus doesn't?
That's true.
Because Sony hasn't. I guess Sony hasn't released a round one.
Yeah, supposedly
they haven't made one since Smartwatch 3.
they're
Though
out.
I think they have bigger fish to fry.
they do, as in profitability.
Yeah.
But
Getting out of the mobile. No.
I think that in the next probably 4 or 5 months, we're going to see a good handful of new Wear devices, apparently, based on what we've heard. The Polar watch was the first one of the group of new watches that we're expecting. Plus, Google is working on at least one watch, possibly 2. And we haven't heard anything more on that at this point. So we'll see what happens there. And we know
I think as time goes on, we're going to start seeing more Android Wear devices released by people that you expect to build watches more than people you expect to build phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the thing about that, though, is when we say, smartwatches probably have great margins, I'm guessing regular luxury watches have much better margins than that even. The cost of assembling, if it's not like handmade by some old guy in Switzerland, I'm guessing the margins are pretty much almost pure profit. You're just paying for shipping, raw materials, and advertising. That's probably really it.
So, okay, this is going to sound really strange, but I think that Android Wear moves better when you can buy it from the Dakota Watch Company in the middle of the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I guess. Okay, so here's the thing. I was at a Fossil store like a month ago, and they had all the signage for the Founder Q watch and like the little display case, but there were none in the display case. So
they sold them all, David. They're so popular.
Clearly, they sold them all. Yeah, it was very strange.
Well, they're about to release those new watches, so maybe they're moving all the old ones out.
That's true. Yeah, I guess, especially since the old one's an Intel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That makes more sense. They probably, once Intel got at the mobile chip game, they probably decided no new shipments of those.
They probably don't want the support cost.
Yeah.
Because once your chip provider's gone, that raises a lot of other problems.
Yep. Per original Moto 360. So.
Yeah, God, I'm still just baffled by that chip. Like, OMAPs had been dead for years, and they were like, hey, what if we just used an OMAP in this? That'd be
great. Because Motorola and TI were always buddy-buddy. That's why. I'm guaranteeing that just came down to existing supply relationships.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I think we're about due for a word from our sponsor.
Oh, are we? That's great. Let me just go ahead and try to not act like I didn't have that. Oh, wait, did I lose the thing? Hold on.
Oh, wait. Did I lose the thing? Also, my place.
This is just a bit. David was totally ready and watching the spreadsheet. He knew exactly where we were in the show. This is a funny joke, everybody. Ha ha.
100%. Let me just go ahead and continue this bit. This week's Android Police podcast is brought to you by Linode. Linode has hosted AndroidPolice.com for over 6 years now. Not only are we very happy with their service, we're extremely proud to have them as a sponsor here on the show. And as part of our partnership, you, our listeners, can get a free $20 Linode service credit today just by signing up at linode.com/AndroidPolice. That's L-I, N as in no, O, D as in dog, E.com/AndroidPolice. That is a no-strings attached $20 service credit that you can use today to get a server up and running. Now, what do you get for $20? Well, you could get 2 months of service on Linode's base tier, which gets you a server with 2 gigs of RAM, 1 CPU core, 24 gigs of storage, 2 terabytes of transfer capacity, 40 gigs per second communication inside the network, and 125 megabits per second out. If you need something more robust, well, Linode's got you covered. Their servers go all the way up to 120 gigabytes of RAM, 20 CPU cores, 1920 gigabytes of SSD storage, 20 terabytes of transfer capacity, and 10 gigabits per second outside the network communication speed. So Linode has pretty much anyone covered that needs a powerful server. So if you head to linode.com/AndroidPolice, you can check them out. They have add-on services you'd expect as well, backups, node balancers, and Longview, and basically everything you need to get a server up and running right now. So go ahead and check them out. And thanks again to Linode for sponsoring the show.
All right, thanks to Linode for sponsoring us this week. We are moving on at this point to the hot sheet. A couple of interesting devices on this list here. So Qsara announced a phone this week, and I know what you're thinking. No, this one only has one screen. So sorry everyone who's still waiting on the Echo 2. It's
one of these days it's going to happen.
One of these days. So the Dura Force Pro, Qsara, a big fan of the ruggedized phone here. So this is the Dura Force Pro, and it claims to be an action camera. It's a phone with a GoPro built in, I think is what they're trying to say. But it's
not actually a GoPro, because that is a brand that you're not allowed to reference.
Totally, it's not that.
What
it is ugly. It's ugly.
It is. So like, what is their pitch like for it being an action cam? Just like that, it's like the camera is wide angle. Is that the deal?
That seems to be it. That, and it's ruggedized. So an action camera should theoretically be able to withstand rugged scenarios. And this obviously can. That, and it does have, for its screen size, an outsized battery, so it's 3,240 milliamp hours on a 5-inch phone with 1080p display. So that's pretty good, actually. And with a Snapdragon 617 processor, it's going to sip the power pretty slowly. So I would say, yeah, it could be actually, if you can actually make a phone of this size work as an action camera. I mean, I wonder how much it weighs, because that would be a concern.
Well, not just weight, but the size. Most action cams are meant to be like palm-sized devices. You're not supposed to mount a full phone on top of a helmet.
Yeah,
that's what I want to see. I want to see somebody with this thing mounted on their helmet.
So that, I guess I would say, for an action camera to be a appropriate moniker for this device, it will all come down to the accessories they release to make good on that. So it looks like, what are those two little gold contacts on the bottom there?
Photo pins, right?
Yeah, but for
most
what?
mods should have it more than 2, though.
Yeah, I don't think they're for mods or anything. It looks like maybe there's some kind of dock they want to use it with. Maybe an action dock for action. I mean, I don't like to bash on Qsara's phones for no good reason. They're one of the few companies really dedicated to building ruggedized devices, and they have their place, obviously. So it is weird. And though I do agree that super wide angle does make an action cam, because all action cams are wide angle lenses generally. So that's an important aspect. But that it's only 1080p, I mean, that's probably limited to some extent by the chipset. Kind of a bummer, since 4K video is kind of, one of those things that new smartphones do, and would actually make them preferable to some action cameras that are out there. Considering you can buy the Mi Action Cam, or whatever it is, the Yi Action Cam, which is 4K video for like $100. Buying a whole phone for this kind of purpose, even though it is also a phone, seems a little odd.
Yeah.
You have better dedicated products out there that probably have a more robust accessory ecosystem.
Great.
So it's a phone. Is it on Verizon as per usual?
And it's
or
ugly too. So I don't know if we've mentioned that enough. But it is just really super ugly.
It's a pretty ugly phone.
It is ugly. But hey, good display size relative to battery size, so I bet it actually lasts pretty long and it's ruggedized. So there could be a person out there for this phone. Granted,
a person, one, singular. They'll sell
Granted,
one.
I don't know what Qsara's software is like, so can't really speak to that.
And okay, so the next phone announced this week was the Meizu. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Meizu.
Meizu. That's why I don't think I'm pronouncing it right, because I'm not. The M3E announced this week. We'll pull up pictures of that. You can decide what you think it might or might not look like from the pictures. So pull that up. Probably not something that you'll be finding at your local T-Mobile, but here it is.
Okay. Can you pull up the photo at the very top, the hero image, because okay. So look at this. Okay, the guy in that photo, clearly a white guy, very Chinese name.
Yep.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, China.
It's not the best attention to detail there. And it looks super iPhone-y. Although the back has kind of an HTC vibe. Comes in rose gold. That's nice.
But their rose gold, as Richard points out in the article, is just pink.
No,
There's no gold
pink.
to it. It's just pink.
Yep.
So yeah.
I wish they would have called the blue gold.
It's a cheap, iPhone design knockoff. Specifications are pretty good. It's got a MediaTek Helio P10. P10 is the line below the X Helio series, so they're pretty fast. Octa-core processor with a decent GPU, 3 gigs of RAM, and 30 gigabytes storage. So it's a robust phone as far as feature set goes.
But it's running. So what's the deal? It's running UnoS, which is that it's an Android fork. Is it incompatible? Is it incompatible with Android apps?
Well, it should work with them in theory. It depends on what they're breaking. We don't know. I haven't used an Ali UnoS phone ever. So originally, Meizu ran something called FlymeOS, which was a really heavy Android skin, but it was compatible. Apparently, at some point, they switched to Aliun, which is now called UnoS, which is a fork of Android. And so this would also, by the way, as long as UnoS is still a fork, which I'm guessing it still is, you can't make a proper Google Apps or Google Mobile Services device if you're using a fork, because they won't let you in the Open Handset Alliance. So it's an interesting choice. So obviously this phone, very unlikely to ever launch outside China. Maybe Hong Kong might even be a stretch, for this phone. So it's definitely designed for mainland China. Because it's Chinese language apps. I mean, it could launch in Taiwan too, for example. I don't know, but there'd be no reason in a Western country to buy this because the App Store on it is for Chinese apps. And as of 4 years ago, when Aliun OS was still quite new, the Aliun store for apps had pirated Android apps on it at the time, which wasn't a good look.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was quite amusing.
That was a thing, and that caused Andy Rubin to throw like a kind of a hissy fit over Acer wanting to build an Aliun phone for China, and Google basically said, "All right, you can build an Aliun phone, but you're never building another Android device." And then Acer was like, "Never mind," and so they didn't, and that's where that kind of ended. So it's a very interesting history here. I'm surprised. Well, I don't know how surprised I am that Meizu ended up building a Yun phone. They're an interesting company because they were kind of the Xiaomi before Xiaomi existed. They were the cool upstart, and they totally started with shameless iPhone knockoffs, like just straight up clones, which is how Xiaomi started too, by the way. But this was, I'm surprised they're even still around, but I don't really have a good pulse on what their popularity in China is like these days.
You should have a better pulse on that. I mean, you were there once.
I was there once for like 36 hours, so I know stuff about China now or whatever.
Now I know China. China. All right, so device reviews. We got one of those. ZTE Axon 7 with Ryan Whitwam.
Yep, it is a phone. It is a gold phone that is not not terrible. It is not as good as I was hoping it would be. So the hardware I think is mostly solid. I think the fingerprint sensor on the back is in a very good location. It's got a little divot, like the back of the phone sort of has this depression around the sensor, so it's really easy to find with your finger. It's kind of like the Motorola dimple, so you can balance the phone comfortably in your hand. The buttons on the front, the nav buttons, are atrocious though. They are capacitive and they are not backlit, so you can't see them in the dark. And they are spaced they're very close together, and the hitboxes are really small. So I miss the buttons all the time if the lighting isn't good, which is just dumb. Like a $400 phone like this should not have non-backlit buttons. Like the last phone I remember that was like that was the Zenfone 2, and it was annoying there, but that phone was cheap. You kind of expected some corners to be cut. On a $400 phone, that's just not acceptable. So this phone is sort of like, I feel it's directed at people who are considering a OnePlus 3, because a lot of the specs are very similar, but there are a couple things that are obviously better, like the screen. It's a 1440p AMOLED. It looks very nice. It's reasonably bright. Viewing angles are good. The colors are pretty solid. It also has dual front-facing speakers, which are very, very good. I was actually kind of surprised, because there are some phones that have front-facing speakers that are just like, okay, those are fine speakers, but these ones are really good. So good on ZTE for that. The software, I think, is kind of a mess. Not really liking what ZTE did. So there are just like a lot of, I don't know, some of this I'm sure is just like a bug, and some of it is just like poor decisions. But so for example, every time I took a phone call on this phone, like when I first started using it, the flashlight was turning on, and I could not figure out what the hell was happening. It turns out that even if you have the phone up against the side of your head, and so the proximity sensor knows not to turn the screen on, if you touch the fingerprint sensor, which again is in a very comfortable location, it will unlock the phone and wake it up, and so then your ear starts pressing things on the screen, and it was and I was turning on the flashlight in the quick settings with my ear every time. So yeah, that's really dumb. They should have caught that, because it is a usability nightmare. Because then you have to hold the phone in this really awkward way that avoids the very comfortable finger divot there. So there's that.
This is like the one time. This is like the one phone that would have benefited from having the fingerprint scanner on the front. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, really. So, okay, well, the fingerprint sensor in general, I was not super impressed with. It seemed kind of slow and not very accurate. I mean, other people had better luck with it. I mean, I can only really speak to my experience with it, that it was not very good. So then there are a lot of other weird little things in the software, like the lock screen does not show notifications. When you wake it up, you have to hit a tiny little button up in the corner to toggle the notifications on for the lock screen every time, which is stupid. Like, if I'm doing that, why don't I just unlock the phone? And then they, for whatever reason, have decided that Do Not Disturb mode isn't important. So it's not in the quick settings. There's no way to access it except going all the way into the settings.
What?
Yes, I know, right? So, like, it's not in, like, the volume toggle. It's not anywhere in the quick settings. You can't add it. You have to go into the settings, into the sound menu, and then scroll down to the bottom to get to Do Not Disturb. And when you get there, you cannot turn it on for a set amount of time. It's just on, off, or schedule, which is so stupid.
It's madness.
And look, I mean, people have been complaining, oh, but they could fix this stuff in an update, so it's not really a big deal. But okay, but are they going to fix this stuff? Is that actually something that you see ZTE doing? Because I don't know that I believe they're going to do that. So there's that, another kind of really annoying software thing. I should point out the camera on the phone, pretty good in bright light and sort of like average indoor light. Gets pretty noisy and has bad white balance when it's kind of dark. So I mean, it's an okay camera overall. I mean, I think it's sort of about what I would expect for a $400 phone, and not probably as good overall as OnePlus 3 in that regard. Okay, and then there's kind of a lot of bloatware, and you can disable it, and it's not a huge deal. But I wonder why ZTE spent all the time designing a file manager and a browser and a messaging app and all this stuff that people aren't going to use when they have so many other software problems to deal with. And then, so it's, another thing about the software, like this isn't going to be like a make or break thing for most people, but I just want to point out, like, they hid the battery stats. Like, if you go into the battery menu, there is no way to see, like, the screen on time. It's just not there. And there's so many little things about the software that baffle me. I don't understand why they would do these things. So, like, I mean, there are enough little annoying things that I just don't want to use the phone. It's not like a bad phone. I'm sure that people could cope with this stuff, but I don't know why you would want to when there are other phones in the same price range that are more enjoyable to use.
Yeah, so what about this phone? If you're looking at the OnePlus 3, what makes this phone better? What about it is
really,
superior?
like, just the screen and the speakers, and, like, the screen isn't, like, it's not, like, an amazing screen. Like, it's a good screen, and the OnePlus 3 screen is a little iffy. And, like, the speakers aren't, like, a big deal to me. I don't think front-facing speakers are really, like, a big deal to most people. But, like, those are the two things that are demonstrably better. And other than that, I think that the OnePlus 3 is clearly the better phone. So unless one of those two things is just, like, all you care about, then I don't know why you would buy this phone.
I mean, I guess I've seen it floated too that OnePlus has awful support, which of course they do.
Well, I mean,
I wonder if ZTE's is any better.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, ZTE is obviously, it's not as talked about on the internet, so there haven't been, like, horror stories about it. But who knows? Maybe they're substantially worse for all we know. But yeah, so I would probably say don't buy this phone. Oh yeah, okay. So the app that Matthew has up on the screen now, one of the bloatware apps that they included is this thing called ZTE Rewards, and it's just it's like a vehicle for perk.com rewards. So you can download apps and take surveys and watch ads, and you get points that you can trade for things you probably don't need on perk, which is just a crummy thing to bundle with a phone. Like, it's
That's
just
really, yeah.
It's just gross. So yeah, lots of questionable software decisions here.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I get. I don't get. Looking at the OnePlus 3, unless it's just your general distaste for OnePlus, but trust me, I've got more general distaste for OnePlus than we will ever need in history.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we have been overly kind to OnePlus at Android Police.
But if you told me you got to pick between these phones, yeah, I'm taking the OnePlus.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like,
the custom ROM support is going to be infinitely better. I mean, because that's what you probably end up doing. Because if OnePlus is slow on updates, like they always have been, you're going to go to the custom ROM community to try to address that. I would prefer to be on a custom ROM on the OnePlus 3 versus the Axon 7. Warranty issue even aside, I wouldn't even necessarily consider that.
There is no ROM that's going to change these terrible navigation buttons on the Axon.
Yeah, unless you have a ROM that forces on software enough, I guess. But there's that. Either way, I look at the OnePlus 3. I see you get dash charging. The screen may not be as good, but the support from the community is going to be a lot better. If I'm buying a phone like that, where I know I'm buying into kind of a poor support regime and software that may not be quite so shinily polished as major manufacturers in some respects, I would definitely go with the OnePlus phone. I think you just have a better experience.
Yes, I concur.
All right. Let's move on to emails. We got an email this week from Craig. Craig sent us a bit of a lengthy email, but I'm going to get to just kind of the crux of it. Craig has accumulated $60 using Opinions Rewards. Craig does not like playing mobile games, which I can relate to, Craig. I don't care for mobile games very much myself. Craig is looking for ways that he can justify spending his Google Rewards money on apps. So a lot of the good apps that most people use are either free or you've paid for them a long time ago, right? So I guess what Craig really needs here is some recommendations. What should he use his money on?
Well, it's hard to know what he like does with his phone and like what sort of stuff he might already own. Did he say?
Well, can't
Like
you
what?
use this on like subscriptions to magazines or
Yeah.
books or
Or
use it for-
YouTube
I will-
playing.
Use it for that, man. Or if you're not
I will
signed up
tell
for
you-
YouTube Red Play Music, sign up for that. Use the credit for that.
Yeah.
You'll get way more value.
for 6 months of YouTube Red for sure.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the biggest thing that I use it for is, and Craig, I don't know what your situation is, but I have bankrolled family movie night with Google Play dollars for months. From this exact purpose.
Yeah, you
The
can
movie
get like
rentals.
TV
It's
and
great.
movies on in the Play Store, so you can blow it on that.
And
Good
So
point.
I would also there's the obvious advice: look for pro versions of free apps that you already use, but take that a step further and also think about one of these days you're going to retire your current phone, and unless you're giving it away or reselling it or something like that, try thinking about apps that you might use on the old phone when you don't need it around. Like the two that immediately came to mind is like a webcam app that you could set in like a window or something. Because just my own example, I can't see the UPS or FedEx delivery people showing up at my house, and I'm pretty far away from the main doors. So when they knock, I have no idea it's happening. I'll set up a phone in my window, just pointed at the gate, and a little window in my computer screen, and I always know that they're coming. And the other one that just popped to mind is like a time-lapse photography sort of thing. Just get that for your phone, pick a spot, and take some shots for the hell of it.
Yeah, not a bad idea at all.
There you go. All right. Some other similar things like my Galaxy S3 still exists. It still is. It's my son's daily driver. My 6-year-old son has a Galaxy S3 with no cell phone service tied to it. You can find things like kid-proof launchers and stuff like that if you want to just kind of hand that thing down, but you don't want kids doing whatever kids do. They do things. Who knows
Yeah,
what they are.
kids, they do stuff.
Kids. They're kids. They kid around. All right, so hopefully that helps you out a little bit there, Craig. I don't know. I'm with you. The one game you said you're not much of a gamer. I'm not either. I do find these the storyline games. Was it the Bad Wolf storyline? They do Telltale games. Those ones are kind of interesting for folks who don't necessarily like games. They're a little bit more kind of choose your own adventure shows more than anything else.
Yeah, I have not played the Lifeline games that he mentions in the email, so I don't have any particular opinion of those.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the top apps here, here's a few I'd recommend. It's a game, but Monument Valley. If you haven't played it, it is a mobile game, but as mobile games go,
It's really good.
It's stellar. Yeah,
it is. It's very good. You should definitely buy that one.
That's a first recommend to almost everyone I know.
Yeah. If you're into podcasts, buy Pocket Casts. No question. Buy it immediately. Great podcasting app. If you don't have Nova Launcher, I mean Prime, buy that. What else is here that I have? You could buy. This is getting kind of slim pickings fast.
Actually, I'll suggest if there's any social networks you use or anything where there's kind of an open API and a ton of competing apps, just go wild and try like 5 or 6 of them. They're gonna combined 5 or 6 of them is going to eat up like $10. It's no skin off your back, and you can try all of them.
If you're a Twitter person, then try a couple
especially
Twitter
Twitter.
clients.
Twitter.
Yeah.
There's some good Reddit clients too. I've recently switched from Bacon Reader to Boost. I think I used a couple of rewards bucks on that. So.
Oh, Weather Timeline. I'm quite a big fan.
Yeah, a lot of people like Weather Timeline. I don't really quite get it, but it's a very popular one for sure. If you want to blow a bunch of money, if you're into console games at all, there are a lot of the Final Fantasy ports, and they cost a lot of money. Wait for a sale, because they always go on sale. They go on sale 4 times a year. So those are always good for a good $10 to $15 spend if you don't have any of those.
And I would really I think it needs to be reiterated. Everything in the content library, movies, books, TV shows.
Yeah.
Man,
Definitely.
there's a lot of good stuff in there. Comic books.
Yeah, without a doubt.
All right, so if you like Craig, have some questions you would like to pose towards us, you can send us over an email at podcast@androidpolice.com. You can also give us a call at 530-HELLO-AP. That is 530-435-5627. You can also find us on Twitter at Android Police and on Google Plus and Facebook.
And thank you again to Linode for sponsoring the podcast this week. You can check them out at linode.com/AndroidPolice. Get a free $20 Linode service credit.
So the folks in the chat room are touting icon packs for your...
No!
Icon packs.
I'm kind of more in the no camp myself, but...
I'm looking at like the top paid apps on Google Play and getting depressed very fast.
I know.
Yeah,
Well, the alternative to icon packs, which he kind of mentions in the question, is watch faces. And like there's a bunch of good ones.
Yeah,
The problem with watch faces is that like so many of them are 99 cents or like $1.19. For some reason, all watch faces are like $1.19. I don't know what that's all about, but I'm guessing it's a conversion rate thing.
Oh, can you use Google Play Store credit to do an IAP in Google Drive for more storage?
No.
Damn it.
You cannot.
I wonder if you can do it for Dropbox. There's an IAP for Dropbox.
Then I guess probably.
Yes.
But I don't know if you can split the cost between that and something else for an outside service like that.
Dropbox allows you to pay monthly. It's just a little more.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, but you know what's funny though? One of the top paid apps right now is this fake GPS location spoofer, which I guarantee is there just because of Pokemon Go.
Fucking Pokemon Go. Jesus, man.
Pokemon Go.
And the other one's a battery saver app for Pokemon Go. It's like number 100 something. Yeah, it's ridiculous. All right. I wrapped up recording there. I'm going to stop the broadcast.